Hello. It feels like every year there are certain books that get so much critical attention, so much prize attention, and you'll see these books in big stacks in the fronts of bookshops and in the display windows. But then there are other books which go slightly under the radar and which are also really great, but which a lot of readers just don't notice as much or even know about as much. And so I've been trying to seek out more of these books that deserve more attention. And I came across this article in Kirkus Reviews by Tom Crewe, who's a journalist and an editor that I really enjoy following. And he points out 5 books that he feels like deserved more buzz this year. So I want to talk about why all these books sound really interesting. And the very first book, I felt very smug. I have read, but then the other 4 books I haven't, and a few of them I've not even heard of before. So if you have read all of these books, then you can feel very secure that you have your finger on the literary pulse. But I'd love to know if you have read any of them, or if you think there are other books that definitely deserve more attention that have come out this year. So please let me know about that in the comments below. And he points out that, there are a lot of these books that have been getting so much attention. They are really great. They deserve that attention. But then there are other books that also, should be noticed a bit more. So the very first book he discusses is The New Life by Tom Crewe, which coincidentally is the very first book that I read this year. And it is so special and wonderful. It's the story of 2 men, one man named John, who's gay, and one man named Henry, who is straight. And they are living at the end of the 1800s in England, and they collaborate on a book that tries to show in a really honest way the lives of gay men and how they live in a way to try to make people more aware of this and enact change to the repressed laws and social norms of the time. And what's so wonderful about this book, even though it's a historically set story about a very specific issue, that it speaks to so much about how we live in the world and how we can try to change the world, but the real difficulties that we encounter. So Henry wants to live in the future that he wants to see happen. But when you get into the details of that, of how do you actually make change occur? Do you try to change the laws of the society you live in, or do you try to change the attitudes of people in that society? And what happens when you try to live your life to the fullest and find the happiness that you want to achieve, but when that impedes upon the happiness of other people around you and that are close to you, then what do you do? And I feel like this is the issue that this novel explores so complexly while telling a really great story. It's so compelling how John falls in love, and you want to root for him because he falls in love with another man after being married to a woman for many years and having children and, living a kind of conformist straight life. But then when he tries to pursue this love and be with the man that he really loves, how this affects his wife so horribly and really destroys her life. And so it shows the complications of that in a really compelling way, tells such a great story that has some very steamy scenes, and but also speaks about these larger issues which are still relevant to us. Next is a memoir called Don't Call Me Home by Alexandra Auder, who is the daughter of an Andy Warhol superstar named Viva. And I have such a fascination with this whole artistic scene in New York City of the 1960s and 70s, of Warhol's factory and all of the eccentric and lively and complicated individuals that were involved in that. And I used to like to imagine what it would be like being there. And I feel like this is what the memoir will show from the inside, but show the real darkness and complications of this period and this group of people, alongside all of the excitement and fun of it. So it recounts how she grew up in the Chelsea Hotel and was around all of these interesting personages, and she's also the sister of Gabby Hoffman, who was much younger than her, and she helped raise her, and I love Gabby Hoffman. So this will be so interesting to read about, and it has some fans from like Debbie Harry, who is of course a big part of this scene, Blondie, and she says, "Don't Call Me Home is about madness and love. Alexandra tells the best stories about her extraordinary childhood as she travels the world with her mother Viva, wit and wisdom wrapped and bound with love." And also Maggie Nelson, the great writer, says, "Alexandra Auder's Don't Call Me Home is thrumming with life in all its absurdity, vividness, and gunk. I literally laughed and cried and cheered hard throughout for our intrepid narrator who has gifted us an incomparable tale." The Man in the Macintosh Suit by Rina Ayuyang, and this is a graphic novel. I've been meaning to read more graphic fiction, and this story sounds really interesting. It's set during the Depression era in the late 1920s in California, following a man who was born in the Philippines and who's highly educated in law, but having moved to America in order to earn a living, he has to perform manual labor, working in the fields, picking fruit. But then when his estranged wife is spotted in San Francisco, he borrows a suit and he travels there to try to track her down, and it's styled like an old noir story in its graphics, and that sounds so intriguing to me, and following this tale of mistaken identities and lost love and speakeasies. So it sounds really exciting and intriguing, as well as like an important historical tale. Northwoods by Daniel Mason, and this is a novel which has been getting some attention. It was a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize, and I have seen displays of it in bookshops, but Tom Crewe feels he deserves even more attention and should be a real household name of an author. And this is a story set in Massachusetts, following a building over a long period of time and all of the people that inhabited this house. And he uses different styles to tell these different people's stories, but it's all centered around a single house. And I really like tales that do this. I mean, I remember Barbara Kingsolver's novel Unsheltered does a similar thing of like looking at a single structure and house over two very different time periods. And so I think this is a story I'll really enjoy reading. And I did become aware of Daniel Mason a few years ago when he won the Joyce Carol Oates Prize, and so for his novel Winter Soldier, which has been sitting on my shelf for ages, and I've still never read him, so this is an author I really should explore more of. And finally, there is The Comfort of Crows, A Backyard Year by Margaret Renkl. This is a book of nature writing and memoir where the author records small and large changes which occur in her backyard, but also in her life over a period of a year. And I really like this idea of keeping an account of just like the small things that you notice in your own neighborhood over a period of time, and recording that to show how change really occurs. And it's an idea I might like to try in the new year. It's a good proposition, isn't it? And I do really enjoy reading nature writing and connecting with nature, especially as a person who lives in the city and who does have like a lot of nature around me. I notice lots of foxes running out late at night through the streets, but also I have a lovely local park near me that I like taking walks in, and have a lovely garden. And so, yeah, I really like this idea of following this. And Anne Patchett herself, who of course has a best-selling book, calls this a howling love letter to the world. And it just sounds really like a really wonderful read. So let me know what you think of any of these books, if you have read them, or if you're interested in reading them now, or if you have suggestions of books that you feel like have gone under the radar this year. Please let me know about that in the comments below. But I hope you're doing well and reading good things. I'll speak to you again soon. Bye-bye.